All right, everyone, it's time for the final Sticks, Hex, and Hammer predictions for the election. That is tomorrow. Make sure that you vote. Make sure that you get somebody else who's maybe more lazy, more reluctant to vote as well. Men, get out and vote. And we need to save our republic. Our founders, pooped in the woods and, were mauled by black bears and shit like that and constantly under hostile attack by so-called natives and so forth. I think that we can press a button or, write in a couple of circles. I don't think that that's too hard. Here's my predictions. First, I predict that Trump will win the election. I'm looking at the late-breaking polling. I'm looking at all indicators. When I compare them to 2016 or especially 2020, a significant improvement for Trump in the national popular vote and also an improvement in some of the key swing states. Here's how I read it. And you'll know. Link in the description, and I'll pin it at the top on YouTube for your edification. There are two states that I haven't actually filled in here at all. Pennsylvania and Arizona have both said they're not going to have the results on election night, which means that those states will be, Maricopa alone could keep that election up in the air for more than a week. They've already said, well, it might take us, it might take a week or two. We're not exactly sure. I think the other counties in Arizona should refuse to release any results at all until Maricopa comes in. That way there can be no shenanigans there. In Pennsylvania, of course, they're going to have a bunch of ballot drops. We've seen this before. Saw a story earlier today that something like 90,000 ballots had been disqualified in Arizona because they were damaged or otherwise compromised. And you've got some weird shit going on right now. You've got in Kentucky, supposedly, which will go for Trump. Don't worry about that. You've got apparently little black marks on the Kamala Harris part of the ballot in some cases. There's at least one report of that, and it's probably more. That would spoil the ballot, because if you vote for Trump but there's a little black dot on the Kamala one, the machine, of course, will not read it properly. Here's my predictions. I'm going to refer to the map. I think the blue wall states will hold, unless there's a significant swing at the last minute for Trump. But we can't count on that. There are basically three scenarios. Trump outperforms, Harris outperforms, or we're roughly at where we're at the polling aggregate. I think Trump wins if he outperforms or if it's roughly at the aggregate. Harris doesn't necessarily win even if she outperforms by a point or two. She'd still technically be behind where Hillary was in 2016 in much of that swing state polling. So here's my prediction for the sensitive states. Minnesota, New Hampshire, and Virginia are all within low single digits, but I think Kamala Harris will manage to take them in the end. I don't think, unless there is like a 2.5 swing for Trump, in which case, Virginia and Minnesota especially look like they would be on the chopping block. And if we get results in from New Hampshire and Virginia, those are two states we'll be watching very closely on election night. And it looks either demonstrably closer or Trump appears to be mildly ahead, which is possible, then the election will go to Donald Trump. Pennsylvania and Arizona, of course, I'm not going to bother giving an estimate on because of shenanigans. North Carolina, Trump has slightly expanded his lead there. It's not a huge lead, but again, unless he comes in several points behind the aggregate, which there's no reason for me to believe he will, based on early voting totals, based on the gauged level of enthusiasm, albeit at a subjective one, I think he gets North Carolina, probably by about 3. I think he gets Georgia, probably by about the same margin. Ohio and Iowa, despite late-breaking polling, are not in play. Neither are Texas and Florida. He'll get those states. I think that he will edge Kamala Harris very, very slightly in Michigan. The other day, in my other preliminary poll, I had him probably losing Michigan. I think that there's just enough voters who are disaffected by Kamala Harris' repeated refusal to weigh in on the Palestinian issue to tilt it in her direction. There's a reason why she's spending the last days of her campaign solely in Michigan and Pennsylvania. If she really were confident, she'd be in Florida right now, or North Carolina. I don't think that she's confident at all. I think that Wisconsin will go for Donald Trump. Again, it'll probably be by a very low single-digit margin, but I think he will, in the end, carry the state. And so then you've got your Rust Belt swing. I think Nevada, he'll get that. And that would point towards him getting Arizona. He's actually riding ahead in Arizona of where he is in Nevada. And then, these are crucial races. The only reason that I'm not giving Arizona to Trump is because of Maricopa County at this point. So I think that's the election. I think that Virginia, New Hampshire, and Minnesota hold for Harris, albeit by an underwhelming margin. I think Trump takes the other sensitive states, generally speaking, although, again, by relatively low numbers. It'll be better than in 2016, but in the end, he will take the states. The only caveat is Pennsylvania and Arizona, in my mind, and that's because of fortification more than anything. In Georgia, I think they failed at fortifying that state. I can't imagine that Georgia's going to go for Kamala Harris. If it does, though, and Trump does get Pennsylvania anyway, he still wins the election. In fact, I think he would still win the election. Let me do this numeric really quick. Let's say he gets Arizona, but manages to lose Georgia and Pennsylvania. Yeah, he still wins. 277 to 261, as I suspected. There is the possibility that he manages to grab one of the blue wall states that remains. It is possible that he gets Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire. If, again, with the East Coast results that'll be coming in more early than things out west, Arizona, Nevada, etc., certainly the Rust Belt states, if it does look like he has potentially grabbed one of those states, New Hampshire or Virginia specifically, the election will probably fundamentally be over. It would point to a considerable outperformance. I'm seeing more energy among Trump fans. I'm seeing more organizational capacity, except maybe on the ground in the craptivistic sense. The liberals tend to outperform there. But when I look at the early voting especially, early voting in person, I see two possible explanations, technically three, for the situation. The Republicans are outperforming where they have in the past by a double-digit margin. I can assume that this is all people that would have voted on Election Day anyway, but they decided to early vote because Trump told them it was a good idea. Or I can assume that most of these people would not have voted and decided to vote early, or I can assume that there's some mixture of the two. I choose the third path. I think that some of these people would have voted anyway, but I think some of them wouldn't, because their schedule may not allow them to go out on election. It's not a national holiday. So some hundreds of thousands of those people, I think, would not have voted at all were it not for the admonishment, hey, you can vote for like the next fucking couple of weeks. Just do it now and get it over with. And then on Election Day, you don't have any problems. Some of those people, since they early voted, have died. Well, normally they would vote Democrat, but they already put in their votes, so the Democrats will lose some tens of thousands of votes probably in the competitive states simply because people early voted. So I do believe that Trump will win the election. I don't think it'll be quite as big a margin as 2016, but I think that he will outperform in the popular vote as well. I think that he'll do better in the popular vote than in either of the other elections he's been part of and end up clinching the presidency same night. I think in the end, the holdout states won't have enough electoral votes to deny him the presidency. That leads us to the possibility that they prevent him from taking office anyway through one of a variety of Raskin-esque sort of legal means. Kamala refuses to certify, thus causing mass protests. It's possible. She's an egotist and a psychopath, so there's always the remote possibility. Raskin could weigh in, the Senate Dems and so forth. Also, we should probably predict that. I think in the Senate, the Republicans will gain a couple seats. They'll have the Senate, albeit by a very narrow margin. As for the House, I don't know. I think that I favor the Republicans to maintain the House and probably grow their lead by a couple of seats, but it's not going to be a red wave. Do not expect a red wave election at the congressional level. Expect mild advances at best. Could break even. The Republicans have, a 2-seat majority in the House? They can barely cling to that power because the House Republicans are so fucking dysfunctional. So that's my final prediction for the election. There might be a few new polls today. We will carefully weigh them in. But I think that Trump is in a good situation. He's got the upper ground. He's clearly got the better hand dealt to him. And shy of shenanigans, I have no doubt that he'll be, again, number 47. The second non-consecutive president in U.S. history, which will cause, by the way, enormous problems with the liberals. They will riot, they'll burn Wendy's, and it'll be like, Summer of Love only in winter. They will riot, they'll attack the White House probably, and it won't be labeled an insurrection, by the way, just so that we're aware. This has happened before. That was not considered insurrection-y now, was it? That's about all. Peace out.